Hello there, you're watching World News Program on All 24 News Channel. I'm Kirin Zachary and these are tonight's top stories. 22 Palestinians were killed in a Zionist strike on Khan Younis in southern Gaza. The health ministry says the famine sweeping the strip is a shame on the world's conscience. And Algeria stresses it's no accident, but a political choice imposed by the occupation. Also in our news, at the Tokyo Summit for African Development, leaders shut down Morocco's bid to divide African unity, and a global campaign is taking shape to put complicit companies in the dock. Next, in Libya, the High Elections Commission says it's facing malicious attempts to derail the process, while the UN urges all sides to respect the municipal results. And later on, in France, opposition parties are rallying for the September protests, even pushing for the government's ouster. The Greens accuse Bayrou of flirting with far-right ideas just to cling to power. And Yellow Vests warn the far-right could hijack the demonstrations. Welcome back to the program. First in our news, the health ministry in Gaza says 61 people were killed and more than 300 others wounded in the last 24 hours alone. In a statement on Saturday, the ministry confirmed the overall death toll from the occupation's ongoing genocidal war has now climbed to more than 62,600, with over 157,000 injured. Officials warn the real toll is likely higher or much higher, with many victims still trapped in the rubble or lying in the streets. In the same context, the Zionist occupation has carried out another deadly strike in Khan Younis, this time hitting the Mawasi area, a so-called safe zone. Doctors at Nasser Hospital say 22 people were killed, including 12 children and at least 3 women. Dozens more were wounded, and tents sheltering the displaced went up in flames. In central Gaza, 3 people died when a home in Al Buraij camp was bombed, and more were killed in Deir al-Bala. In the north, the Zionist forces pushed deeper with raids and demolitions. 5 killed in Jabalia, among them 2 children, and more deaths reported in the Zaytun neighborhood and Sabra. Casualties are mounting across the entire strip.
The bombing resulted in the deaths of 4 members of the Shulub family and the injury of more than 12 others from the same family, in addition to a large number of wounded from other families whose numbers are not yet known. Martyrs from various families also fell in a shocking scene that reflects the magnitude of the tragedy and the large number of victims. The targeted area was a completely safe humanitarian zone, the northern gate of Asba, without no security threat to Israel. All those present were civilians, mostly elderly people, children, women and people seeking safety. They were sheltering in tents that offered little protection from the heat of the sun or the cold of the night, believing they had found a safe haven.
Meanwhile, the health ministry in Gaza says 8 more people, including 2 children, have died from starvation in just the past 24 hours. In a statement on Saturday, officials confirmed that the number of Palestinians who have lost their lives to hunger is now standing at 281, among them 114 children, the result of the occupation starvation war on the Strip. The health ministry in Gaza is also saying in UN's declaration of famine has come far too late, after Palestinians have already paid a heavy price, that is. In an interview with All 24 News Channel, Health Ministry Director General Munir al-Bursh confirmed that more than 272 people, including over 113 children, have died from hunger and malnutrition. He called the UN's late recognition a disgrace to the conscience of the world.
إعلان المجاعة هي وصمة عار على جبين الإنسانية بأكملها.
The declaration of famine is a stain on the conscience of all humanity. To think that in the 21st century, children are dying of hunger in the Middle East. For the first time in this region so rich in resources, the United Nations has stated that this famine is man-made, meaning it is the result of the Israeli occupation.
For its part, Algeria is sounding the alarm over Gaza's worsening crisis. The foreign ministry is saying the famine tearing through the Strip isn't just the result of hardship, but a political choice deliberately engineered by the Zionist occupation. In a statement on Saturday, Algiers called the UN's official declaration of famine an extremely dangerous precedent, not only for the Palestinian cause, but for the wider history of the Middle East.
In an extremely grave and unprecedented development in the history of the Palestinian cause and in the history of the entire Middle East, the United Nations yesterday officially declared a state of famine in the Gaza Strip. What is most alarming and deeply reprehensive is that this full-fledged famine is not the result of unavoidable circumstances, but rather a deliberate political choice and the outcome of planning and orchestration by the Israeli occupation. The famine that has now been declared is by no means disconnected from the project of forced displacement, the reoccupation of Gaza, or what has become or what has come to be known as the project of Greater Israel.
Similarly, Algeria is urging the international community and the UN Security Council to step up and block the so-called Greater Israel project, stressing that only the two-state solution can pave the way for a just and lasting peace.
Algeria strongly condemns these policies and practices imposed on the Palestinian people in the context of the ongoing war of extermination in Gaza. It calls on the international community, and in particular the UN Security Council, to assume its responsibilities by engaging in the collective action required to foil the project of Greater Israel and to safeguard the foundations of the two-state solution as the cornerstone of any just, lasting and final settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Algeria, as a member of the Security Council, reaffirms its commitment to continuing diplomatic efforts to support the Palestinian people and to push for an end to this unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. It also stresses its determination to work towards expediting the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital.
And in another reaction, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, says the famine in Gaza can still be stopped, but only if massive amounts of aid are allowed in immediately. In a post on its X page Saturday, the agency stressed that large-scale deliveries through the United Nations, including UNRWA itself, are urgently needed to halt the catastrophe. And finally, in our file of Gaza, survival has become a daily gamble. What should be a lifeline, that is food aid, is turning into a deadly battlefield as starving civilians risk their lives under fire just to secure a bag of flour. Here's Yassine Rekti with the report now.
On makeshift stretchers fashioned from wooden pallets, wounded civilians are carried away through hostile terrain. As gunfire cracks in the background, Zionist bullets fly across the aid distribution zones, where thousands of desperate Gazans risk their lives for a kilo of flour or rice. Many return empty-handed, exhausted and defeated, as famine continues to spread across the Strip.
I came looking for food and water for my children. Unfortunately, human beings are dying without getting anything. Why is a 30-year-old like me running after a kilo of lentils or a kilo of flour? I came here to bring food to my children, but I couldn't get anything because of the large number of people and the difficult situation between the shootings and the trucks crushing people.
What should be a lifeline has turned into a battlefield. Civilians, already weakened by hunger, find themselves trapped between a ruthless occupying army and the spectre of forced displacement. The latest strategy of Netanyahu, observers warn, appears aimed at starving and dehydrating the population to pave the way for the colonization of Gaza.
We have been displaced 12 times, but today the word displacement terrifies us because we have no means, neither financial nor material, and we have nothing left to build tents or houses. We are very tired. They are killing us in every way.
Despite harrowing images of malnourished children and repeated warnings from humanitarian organizations, including the IPC's confirmation of famine, the Zionist entity presses ahead with large-scale ground operations. Each escalation only deepens the humanitarian disaster, tightening the grip of famine and perpetuating what is widely described as an unfolding genocide.
Moving on now to another story. The head of the Sahrawi Workers Union is urging global trade unions to take legal action against companies exploiting Western Sahara's resources. Speaking at the closing of an African labor meeting in Tanzania, Secretary General Nafi Ahmed Mohammed said firms must be forced to respect international law and comply with rulings from African and European courts, all of which deem any use of Sahrawi land, wealth, or airspace illegal without the consent of the people. He underlined the key role unions play in exposing and condemning such violations. In Morocco, the Association for the Protection of Public Funds is blasting the Makhzen regime for what it calls legislating discrimination and impunity. On Facebook, the group's president, Mohamed El Ghallousi, denounced Articles 3 and 7 of the new draft criminal code, saying they blatantly violate the consultation by putting prosecutors under executive control. He also accused Parliament of being exploited through collusion between the majority and much of the opposition, all aimed, he says, at breaking the link between responsibility and accountability.
Passing Articles 3 and 7 of the Draft Criminal Procedure Code is a blatant violation of the Constitution and the separation of powers, and places the Public Prosecution Office under the authority of the administration and the executive branch. They are legislating for discrimination, impunity, and exploitation of Parliament, with blatant and exposed collusion between the majority and large part of the opposition to undermine the link between responsibility and accountability.
Still with regional news, wrapping up its 9th session in Yokohama, the Tokyo International Conference on African Development reaffirmed its stand against any attempt to undermine African unity. The move came after Morocco failed in its bid to delete the phrase "Member States of the African Union" from the final communiqué, a statement that included the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. Here's Zahra Farjani with the full story now.
Morocco's attempts to undermine African unity ended in complete failure after participants in the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development rejected the removal of the phrase "Member States of the African Union" from the opening paragraph of the summit's final communiqué. The phrase unsettled the Moroccan delegation and exposed the hidden motive behind its objection, an effort to exclude the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, a founding member of the African Union, from this continental body, and deny its participation in the Union's bilateral meetings with foreign partners.
Japan and the African countries deliberately repeated this term several times as an expression of their refusal to undermine the African Union. What stood out in this summit were the strict security measures taken by the Japanese authorities to protect the Sahrawi delegation, its flag, and the banner bearing the name of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in order to prevent a repeat of last year's assault by the Moroccan delegation. It seems that the reckless and foolish behavior of some Moroccan diplomats had a direct impact on the measures taken by the host country, which turned the Sahrawi delegation into the focus of attention and interest for all summit participants.
Morocco's failed maneuvers to undermine the legitimate rights of the Sahrawi Republic as a founding member of the African Union mark yet another setback for the Moroccan delegation and a victory for the Sahrawi people's cause, reaffirmed once again on the international stage as a just struggle for self-determination.
In other regional news in North Africa, Libya's National Elections Commission says turnout in the second round of municipal elections topped 72%. At a Saturday press conference, officials announced that more than 165,000 voters cast their ballots out of a total of nearly 229,000 registered across 26 municipalities.
طبعا هذه النتائج تخص 26 بلدية فقط.
These results correspond to only 26 municipalities. According to official data I have behind me, the number of voters who participated in this process exceeds 228,000. The turnout rate on election day was 71%, but after revisions, this figure increased to 72.4%. However, even this percentage will change, given that we have elections today in the cities of Zawiya, Misrata, Sabrata and Sorman, in which more than 51,000 voters will participate. Therefore, this percentage could vary if we add the voters and participants from this day, although not necessarily definitively.
Meanwhile, Libya's Elections Commission is urging the parliament-backed government to let it finish municipal polls in councils left out of the August 16 vote. Chairman Ahmed Essayah said Saturday the body is ready to move ahead in 16 municipalities, but elections in about 10 others in the south and east will need to be restarted from scratch, meaning a delay until later this year. He also warned of what he called malicious reports prepared in advance to disrupt Libya's electoral process.
ندعو مرة أخرى الحكومة الليبية أن هي
We once again call on the Libyan government to allow and facilitate the Commission to complete at least the organization of the municipalities where the electoral process is halted. That is, there are 16 municipalities whose voters are ready to go to the polls. This operation is necessary, but as for the remaining municipalities, unfortunately the time has been extended and we need to restart all phases of the electoral process in them. This leads us to postpone these municipalities practically until the third group, which will begin in the last quarter of this year.
For its part, the UN mission in Libya is urging all parties to accept the results of Saturday's municipal election. In a statement, UNSMIL praised the vote held in 7 municipalities despite last week's arson attack on the Elections Commission's warehouse in Zawiya. The mission also pressed the parliament-appointed government of Osama Hamad to lift obstacles and allow suspended polls to move forward, so all Libyans can freely exercise their political rights and choose their local councils. Moving on now, in Sudan, the UN says at least 89 people were killed in just 10 days during attacks by the Rapid Support Forces in Al-Fashir and the nearby Abu Shouk camp in North Darfur. UN Rights Office spokesman Jeremy Lawrence told reporters in Geneva the real toll could be far higher, calling the assaults brutal and a clear violation of international law since civilians were deliberately targeted. Local military sources reported fresh clashes on Saturday between the army and RSF south of Al-Fashir, with explosions and heavy weapons fire echoing across the city. The army insists it is fighting to break the siege that has strangled the city for weeks now. Moving on to Europe now, in France, the Green Party has thrown its weight behind the September 10th protest against Prime Minister François Bayroul's austerity policies. Speaking at the party's summer gathering in Strasbourg, Secretary General Marine Tondelier confirmed environmental activists will join the demonstrations, voicing strong opposition to the government's economic plan and warning that the movement is under pressure to abandon its goals.
This means very simply that everyone should be welcome in the primary at the Popular Front 2027 wishes to organize, from Raphael to Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Of course, we have the right to disagree with them at times. That's no problem. We even have the right not to vote for them in this primary if we prefer someone else.
Similarly, the French Green Party leader has accused Prime Minister François Bayrou of borrowing far-right ideas to shape government policy, saying he is exploiting every opportunity to reach Matignon Palace and cling to power.
It may be unusual, but it's essentially consistent with what we have always said. The ecologists want to broadcast possible union, wherever feasible, to enable as many as cities governed by the right to transition to the left, and in cities where the left or the ecologists are already in power, and where the mayor seeks re-election. It seems logical and obvious that those who have worked well together throughout the term should continue within at least that same framework.
In France, still, the Yellow Vest movement, now the country's largest labor coalition, is warning of far-right attempts to infiltrate the September 10th protest against Prime Minister François Bayroul's austerity plan. In a statement, the group also hit out at CGT union leader Sophie Binet, accusing her of trying to undermine the strike after she dismissed it as anonymous and mysterious. The Yellow Vests say such remarks stifle the movement's goals and risk sabotaging the protests. Several French political parties say they will back a nationwide strike on September 10th called the Yellow Vest movement. The left-wing France Insoumise party also announced plans to push a non-confidence vote against François Bayroul's government in Parliament on September 23rd. Here's Sofiane Kenturi with the report now.
France is heating up politically, heading toward what analysts describe as an unprecedented deadlock. The opposition is calling for a nationwide general strike on September 10th, branding it a form of civil disobedience that reflects mounting public anger. Political parties and unions have already announced their support, determined to ease what they call for a suffocating grip on French society.
Les insoumis sont appelés à tous s'investir dans ce mouvement.
The whole opposition is invited to join this movement. Trade unions are already calling for a strike on September 10th. The Rail Workers Union will strike, and the General Confederation of Labour has openly backed the action. It's not up to us politicians to declare a general strike. That is the union's responsibility. But the choice is theirs, and it is clear they are ready to assume it.
Observers say September 10th may only mark the beginning of a wider confrontation. Opposition forces are preparing to escalate inside parliament, seeking to topple Prime Minister François Bayroul's government and block his proposed austerity plan, already facing weak political support and strong public resistance to any cuts in social benefits.
Ce plan est absurde.
September 10th is not only the start. On September 23rd, we will formally challenge Bayroul's budget. If he thinks the country needs 40 billion euros in cuts, I tell him the people are wondering how to fill their fridges, not empty them. Bayrou has become out of touch. French people need air to breathe, and his policies are suffocating them.
As France nears the end of 2025, signs point to more turbulence. Bayroul's government has narrowly survived multiple non-confidence votes, while critics argue that President Emmanuel Macron's decisions since mid-2024 have only deepened the crisis. With anger rising, many fear of return of the Yellow Vest-style protests that shook France in 2018.
Elsewhere in Europe, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will not give up any territory to Russia under a ceasefire deal. Speaking on Independence Day, he accused Moscow of working to block any possible meeting with President Putin.
This flag is a goal and dream for many Ukrainians on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. They keep the flag. They keep it because they know that we will not gift our land to an occupier. This flag symbolizes the dearest thing for hundreds of our warriors, men and women from all over Ukraine who defend the specific direction of the front line. Not just Vovshnak or Dobropilya, but entire Ukraine.
In a related development, the European Commission has approved 4.5 billion euros in new support for Ukraine's budget, drawn from the Ukraine Fund and its emergency aid program. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, in a post on X ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day, said the payout shows the EU's unwavering solidarity, a strong commitment to Kiev's recovery and future.
As Ukraine celebrates its 34th Independence Day, the EU sends a clear message. Our solidarity with Ukraine is unwavering. Today's disbursement of over 4 billion euros demonstrates our staunch commitment. This new funding underlines our commitment not only to Ukraine's recovery, but to its future as a sovereign and democratic country. Because when Ukraine is strong, Europe is stronger too.
Still in relation to the war in Ukraine, India says its oil trade is off limits in talks with Washington. The Foreign Ministry confirmed Saturday that U.S. negotiators have not raised the issue of New Delhi buying Russian crude, stressing those purchases are red line. The comments come after U.S. media reports accused India of laundering Russian oil and helping finance the war in Ukraine. Officials added that trade talks with Washington are still ongoing. And in the U.S., media reported that President Donald Trump has decided to mobilize hundreds of National Guard members in 19 U.S. states within weeks. The same sources explained that Trump decided to deploy approximately 1,700 National Guard members to support his comprehensive campaign against illegal immigration and crime. And finally, to a lighter note, Algeria is taking part in the 4th International Children's Cultural Forum in Moscow, which wrapped up just yesterday. The Culture Ministry says the delegation includes 6 young talents in writing, poetry, music, and theater. This year's forum brought together participants from 14 countries, including 4 Arab states, among them Algeria, to showcase and encourage emerging creativity. And that's the end of our news program for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.